I want to talk to you today about something that every person here has struggled with at some point: trusting beyond knowing. We live in a world that thrives on knowledge, certainty, and control. Every part of us wants to see the full picture, every answer, every detail laid out before us. What happens when you can't see the way? What happens when the road ahead is dark and the map is nowhere to be found? There's something deeper, something stronger that we must tap into. Today, I'm not just speaking to your mind, I'm speaking to your heart. Trusting beyond knowing is not for the faint of heart. It's for those who are willing to move in the unknown, to step out when the ground beneath them is uncertain, to believe in something greater than their understanding. I promise you, this message is for you if you've ever had to take that leap of faith without knowing what lies ahead. Stay with me, because by the end you'll understand why trusting God in the midst of uncertainty is not just a choice, it's the path to your breakthrough. Trusting beyond knowing is a powerful concept that moves us beyond the boundaries of human understanding. At its core, it means believing in something bigger than ourselves, even when we don't have all the answers. We live in a world where information is at our fingertips, where every decision is often backed by data and knowledge. But what happens when the answers are not clear, when the path ahead is uncertain, or when the future seems shrouded in mystery? Trusting beyond knowing is the act of surrendering to a higher power, to a force that sees the full picture even when we can't. When we talk about trust, we often think of it in terms of relationships, trusting a friend, a spouse, a leader. But the trust we are discussing today is not the same. It's a trust that transcends human limitations. It's the kind of trust that rests not on facts, but on faith. It means letting go of the need to control, to understand, and instead choosing to believe that there is a plan at work that goes beyond our limited vision. When you trust beyond knowing, you acknowledge that there are things you may never understand, but you choose to move forward in faith regardless. This kind of trust doesn't come easily. It requires a shift in mindset, a decision to lean into the unknown. It means stepping out of your comfort zone and embracing the uncertainty, knowing that even in the darkest of times, you are not alone. There's a beauty in this kind of trust because it removes the pressure of having to figure everything out. When we trust beyond knowing, we free ourselves from the burden of having to have all the answers. It's a release of letting go of control and an embrace of divine guidance. It's saying, I don't know what's coming, but I believe that God does, and that is enough for me. Life is filled with moments when the path is unclear and the next step seems uncertain. We can find ourselves questioning why things aren't happening the way we expected, or why the road ahead is so challenging. But even in those moments of doubt, trust can be the bridge that carries us through. Trusting beyond knowing doesn't require you to understand every circumstance. It requires you to believe that there is a purpose even when you can't see it. It's acknowledging that the journey, though difficult, is leading somewhere beautiful. This kind of trust challenges our natural instincts. We are often driven by the desire to know what's coming, to have the reassurance of certainty. But there are moments in life when we simply cannot see the road ahead. In those moments, trusting beyond knowing is what keeps us grounded. It's a choice to believe that God is at work in ways we cannot see, and that His timing, though mysterious, is always right. It's an invitation to lean into the unknown, knowing that we don't need to understand everything in order to move forward in faith. So when you find yourself in a place of uncertainty, take a deep breath. Trust beyond knowing. It doesn't mean that you ignore your doubts or deny your questions. It means you allow your faith to lead you, even when the answers are not clear. It's in these moments of not knowing that trust becomes a powerful force, propelling us toward a future that is guided by a wisdom far beyond our own. Faith in the unknown is a concept that is both challenging and transformative. It requires let go of our need for certainty and to embrace the reality that life is often filled with moments when we simply don't have all the answers. This kind of faith is not about blind belief, but about trusting in something greater than ourselves, even when we cannot see the way ahead. It's the kind of faith that moves us to act even when the path is unclear, the next step is uncertain, and the outcome is unknown. It's about stepping into the unknown with confidence, knowing that God is already there guiding us through each moment. When you choose to have faith in the unknown, you acknowledge the limitations of human understanding. We often want to have a blueprint for our lives, a clear and detailed plan that tells us exactly where we are going and how we will get there. But life doesn't always work that way. There are times when the journey feels confusing and the future seems uncertain. In these moments, trusting in the unknown becomes an act of surrender. It's a willingness to let go of our control and to step forward even when we don't have all the answers. It's about saying, I may not understand what's happening, but I believe that God does and I trust his plan. In moments of uncertainty, faith becomes the anchor that holds us steady. We may not know how things will work out, but we can trust that God is working on our behalf. This kind of faith doesn't require us to have all the answers, but it calls us to believe that God's plan is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own timeline or expectations. There is a peace that comes with this kind of trust. It's a peace that allows us to rest in the knowledge that we are not in control, but God is. Even when we cannot see the path ahead, we can trust that he does and that he is leading us to a place of purpose and fulfillment. When we look at the lives of those who have gone before us, we see countless examples of individuals who placed their faith in the unknown. Abraham, for instance, was called by God to leave everything he knew and journey to a land that he had never seen. He didn't have a detailed map or a guarantee of what lay ahead, but he trusted God's call. His faith in the unknown became the foundation for a promise that would change the course of history. This is the kind of faith that we are called to embrace, the faith that moves forward even when the way is unclear, the faith that trusts that God will reveal what we need when we need it. The beauty of faith in the unknown lies in its ability to stretch and strengthen us. It requires us to rely not on our own understanding or plans, but on the trust that God knows what is best for us. When we place our faith in the unknown, we allow God to work in ways we could never have imagined. It is in these moments of uncertainty that we often experience the greatest breakthroughs, the deepest growth, and the most profound transformation. We are called to live by faith, not by sight. And this faith opens the door to experiences that far exceed anything we could have planned on our own. Faith in the unknown is not about having all the answers, but about believing in a God who holds the answers. It's about trusting that even when we don't know what the future holds, we can trust that God does. Uncertainty is a part of life, and it often presents itself when we least expect it. In those moments, we are faced with a decision: do we allow doubt and fear to take over, or do we trust in something greater than ourselves? Trusting beyond knowing, especially in times of uncertainty, is a powerful act of faith. It is in these moments that our belief is tested and our resolve is built. The power of uncertainty is that it is an invitation, a chance for us to grow, to lean into our faith, and to discover that God's plan is unfolding even when we don't fully understand it. We often think of uncertainty as a barrier, something that holds us back or keeps us from moving forward. But in reality, it is in uncertainty that God often does his greatest work. It is in the moments when we are unsure, when we cannot see the way ahead, that we are called to trust beyond what we know. Uncertainty does not have to be a source of fear. It can be a powerful motivator to seek God's guidance more deeply. When we face uncertainty, we are reminded that we are not in control, but God is. This realization is not one of defeat, but one of freedom. It is in surrendering our need for certainty that we open ourselves up to a greater sense of peace, one that comes from trusting that God knows what lies ahead, even when we cannot see it. In times of uncertainty, trusting beyond knowing becomes the foundation for our faith. It is easy to trust when everything is clear, when we can see exactly what is coming next. But it is in the moments of doubt, when the future is foggy and unclear, that trust becomes a choice. It's the choice to believe that God is at work, even when we don't have all the answers, to move forward, even the way is not clear. This kind of trust doesn't require us to understand every detail of the plan, but it calls us to believe that there is a purpose behind every moment and that God's timing is perfect. One of the most powerful aspects of trusting beyond knowing in times of uncertainty is that it allows us to experience God's provision in ways we would never have expected. When we don't know how things will work out, we are more likely to rely on God for our next steps. This dependence on God opens the door for him to show up in ways that we could never anticipate. It's when we can't see the way forward that God often makes his presence known in powerful ways. Uncertainty becomes the space in which God can move, not because he wasn't already at work, but because our trust in him allows us to be more receptive to his guidance. What is most important during uncertain times is not having all the answers, but having faith in the one who does. It's about knowing that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything in his perfect timing. Trusting beyond knowing during uncertainty allows us to relinquish our need to control the situation and rest in the assurance that God is in control. It is in this place of surrender that we begin to understand that the unknown is not something to fear, but a place where God can shape our character, strengthen our faith, and lead us to the next step of our journey. The power of uncertainty lies in its ability to transform us. It is through uncertainty that we are often refined, stretched, and made stronger. We learn to lean not on our own understanding, but on God's wisdom. We discover that even when the road ahead is unclear, we can trust that God's plan is always better than our own. So when you face uncertainty, remember, it is not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity for your faith to grow. Trust beyond knowing and allow God to reveal His goodness and His plan in ways that will strengthen you for what lies ahead. Letting go of control is one of the most challenging aspects of trusting beyond knowing. As human beings, we are naturally inclined to control our circumstances, to make sure everything is lined up just right before we take a step. It's difficult to relinquish this control, especially when we are faced with uncertainty or fear. However, true trust in God requires us to let go of the illusion that we have the power to control every outcome. It means surrendering our need to know exactly how things will unfold and accepting that God's plan is greater than our own. The struggle to control is real. We want to know what's coming next, and when we don't, fear can easily set in. We think that if we have all the answers, we'll feel secure. But the reality is life doesn't always offer certainty. No matter how much we try to control the situation, there will always be things beyond our reach. Letting go of control isn't about being passive or indifferent to the future. It's about trusting that God is in control and that His way is always better than our own. It's about acknowledging that there are things we cannot see and that we don't need to see everything to move forward in faith. The act of surrendering control can be both freeing and frightening. It's freeing because we no longer have to carry the burden of trying to manage every detail. We release the anxiety of needing everything to go according to our plan, and instead we allow ourselves to be guided by a higher power. This kind of trust is not about giving up or doing nothing. It's about taking action in faith while resting in the assurance that God is leading us. It's about understanding that even when we don't have the blueprint, we are still being directed by His perfect wisdom. Letting go of control also means being open to God's timing, which may not always match our own. We often want things to happen quickly, but God's plan doesn't always unfold on our timetable. In fact, there are times when we may feel as though we're waiting indefinitely. But when we trust beyond knowing, we learn to wait with patience and expectancy, knowing that God's timing is always right. In the waiting, He works in us, shaping our character, teaching us perseverance, and helping us grow in faith. Letting go of control means trusting that, even when we can't see it, God is working behind the scenes. The process of letting go is not easy, but it is transformative. It challenges our desires for immediate answers and outcomes, and instead teaches us to trust in the unseen. It invites us to step out in faith even when we don't have a clear path ahead. As we release our need for control, we begin to experience a deeper peace, a peace that comes from knowing we are not in charge, but that God is. Trusting beyond knowing becomes easier when we remember that we are not alone in our journey. God, who created us, who loves us, is always with us, guiding us even in the unknown. This is why letting go of control is not just about relinquishing our grip, it's about embracing the freedom that comes with trusting in a higher purpose that we may not always understand but know is good. Trusting in divine timing can often be one of the most difficult aspects of walking in faith. As human beings, we tend to operate on our own schedules. We have goals, deadlines, and expectations, and we want things to unfold according to our own timeline. When things don't happen when we want them to, it's easy to become frustrated or lose hope. But divine timing is not bound by human limitations. It operates on a level that we cannot always comprehend, and yet it is always perfect. Trusting in God's timing means acknowledging that He knows what is best for us, and that the moments when things seem delayed are part of a larger plan that will be revealed when the time is right. In our fast-paced world, patience is often in short supply. We are accustomed to instant gratification, to receiving what we want when we want it. But God's timing is not about immediate results, it's about preparing us for what He has in store. There are times in life when we feel as though we are waiting for something, waiting for a job opportunity, for healing, for restoration in relationships. The waiting can feel long and painful, but in those moments, God is working behind the scenes in ways we can't see. Trusting in divine timing means accepting that God is orchestrating everything in our lives, even when we don't understand what is happening or why we have to wait. The waiting is never wasted. Every season of waiting serves a purpose. Sometimes God uses the time of waiting to refine us, to shape our character, to teach us patience, and to prepare us for what lies ahead. It is during these periods of uncertainty and delay that we are given the opportunity to grow deeper in our faith. We learn to trust not in our own timing, but in the fact that God's timing is perfect and that everything He does is for our good. As we trust in His timing, we are released from the anxiety of trying to make things happen on our own. We can rest in the knowledge that God is working everything out according to His plan. There are also times when divine timing involves waiting for the right conditions to align. There are moments when we are ready for something, but the world around us is not. The circumstances may not be in place yet, or other people may need time to prepare. Divine timing works in harmony with all the elements of life, and it's not always about us being ready. Sometimes God is preparing everything around us for the moment when we step into what He has for us. Trusting in this timing requires us to let go of our own deadlines and be patient with God's process, knowing that when the time is right, everything will fall into place. Trusting in divine timing also requires us to let go of comparison. We often look at the lives of others and wonder why things are moving faster for them than they are for us. But God's plan for each of us is unique, and His timing is tailored to our individual journeys. The waiting periods in our lives may not look the same as someone else's, and that's okay. God's timing is perfect for our needs, and we don't need to measure our progress against someone else's. When we trust in divine timing, we stop comparing and start focusing on what God is doing in our own lives. So when you find yourself waiting, remember that God's timing is not delayed, it is right on schedule. Trust that He is working things out for you, even when you can't see how. His plan is unfolding, and in due time, everything will make sense. You don't need to rush the process or force things to happen. Instead, rest in the knowledge that God is leading you exactly where you need to be at the right time. Trusting in His timing brings peace, patience, and a deeper confidence in the journey He has set before you. The power of trusting beyond knowing is deeply rooted in our ability to rely on a wisdom far greater than our own. We often find ourselves standing at crossroads in life, faced with decisions that feel overwhelming or impossible to make. The world encourages us to seek all the answers, to have a clear plan and a definitive understanding of where we are going. But there are times in life when no matter how much we search, we cannot see the full picture. It is in these moments of uncertainty that the true power of trust emerges, when we let go of the need to know everything and surrender to the fact that God holds the future. In these times, our human understanding and reasoning can become limitations. We try to map out our own lives, make the perfect decisions, and predict the outcomes, but we often miss the larger plan that God has in store for us. Trusting beyond knowing requires us to embrace the fact that we do not have to understand every detail in order to move forward. It is an act of faith to let go of the urge to control our circumstances and allow God to lead us. This is where true peace is found, not in having all the answers, but in believing that God knows what is best for us, even when we cannot see it. Letting go of the need for certainty does not come easily. It challenges our natural instincts. We are conditioned to seek control, to have our lives figured out, and to avoid ambiguity. Yet trusting beyond knowing invites us to step outside of this mindset. It is not a call to blind obedience or passive acceptance, but rather an invitation to walk by faith, trusting that even in the fog of uncertainty, God is working. It means surrendering to the divine plan, even when we cannot fully comprehend how it will unfold. Trust in these moments brings a sense of freedom, the freedom to stop striving to understand every detail and to start embracing the peace that comes with knowing that God has a purpose. There is also great strength in trusting beyond knowing, because it allows us to find courage in the unknown. Our society tells us that success and security come from knowing all the answers, having a clear path, and eliminating risks. But true courage comes from stepping into the unknown, knowing that even though we cannot see the way forward, God is with us. In these moments, we are called to take bold steps, not because we have everything figured out, but because we know that we are not walking alone. Trusting beyond knowing is what enables us to act, to move forward in faith, even when the road ahead is unclear. When we trust beyond knowing, we are also invited to develop patience. Trusting in the unseen requires time, and it often involves waiting. This waiting is not idle. It is active trust in God's timing. We may not know when things will come to fruition, but we can rest in the certainty that God is preparing us for what lies ahead. Patience is not just about enduring, it is about trusting in God's perfect timing and knowing that what is meant for us will come when it is supposed to. In this waiting period, we grow and mature in our faith, learning to lean more on God's wisdom than our own understanding. Trusting beyond knowing also helps us build resilience. Life is filled with setbacks and challenges, but when we trust beyond what we can see, we are better equipped to handle them. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to deepen our faith, to lean harder into God's guidance, and to strengthen our character. When we don't have the answers, we learn to find peace in the process, knowing that God is at work even in the hardest seasons. Through trust, we become more adaptable, learning to bend and not break in the face of adversity. In the end, trusting beyond knowing is about embracing the mystery of God's plan. It is not always easy, and it often goes against our natural inclination to seek certainty and control. But in surrendering to the unknown, we allow God to work in ways we could never have imagined. The beauty of this trust is that it opens us to the possibilities that lie beyond our own understanding, allowing us to experience God's presence in the most unexpected ways. It teaches us that we don't need to have all the answers in order to move forward, only the trust that God does.